Jonathan Karl is one of those guys that you see in the front row of the White House briefing room quizzing the president or stepping down from Air Force One. If the president or his press secretary is there taking questions, you can bet that John Karl is there asking them, usually with some punch. You'll find him contributing to all of ABC's broadcasts, including Good Morning America, World News with David Muir, and Nightline. In addition, he reports for all of ABC's digital properties, including the popular political blog The Note, and hosts a weekly digital show for ABC News, Yahoo News. John has had broad experience covering U.S. politics, foreign policy, and the military. His reporting drives news cycles and has been recognized with some of the most prestigious honors in journalism, including the 2011 Joan Storsheim-Barone Award for Excellence in Washington-based reporting and an Emmy Award for his coverage of the 2009 inauguration of President Barack Obama. In his 16 years in Washington, he has earned a reputation as a fierce government watchdog for his aggressive investigations of government waste and for his reporting on congressional junkets that led to changes in the rules for travel costs of members of Congress and their staff. They say the third time is a charm, so please join me in welcoming back for the third time to the Forum Club, ABC News' Jonathan Karl.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ed. You're good at this stuff. My God, that was fantastic. It's a real pleasure to be back here in Palm Beach, to have escaped Washington even ever so briefly. And I've got to tell you, and Gail, where is Gail? I mean, there's so many things seem to be conspiring to keep me from getting to Palm Beach over the last just few days. Look at the week we have had. We had the Dennis Hastert story broke late Thursday. Former Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert. This landed right on my lap. I had covered him as Speaker of the House. And now suddenly we get the report that he is being charged with paying somebody off $3.5 million to buy the silence of a former student. So I was scrambling on that story, hoping, that it would get over quick enough to get me down here. And then Friday, I go to the White House, and I get called in by the White House, press secretary, Josh Earnest, says, we want to bring a group of reporters into the Roosevelt room. We got to talk about what's going to happen Sunday night. I was like, Sunday night? I'm going to be in Palm Beach. What are you talking about? Well, of course, this was the fact that the Senate, fighting over the key provisions of the Patriot Act, the three key provisions of this act, which the White House says is absolutely crucial to protecting national security, would be expiring midnight on Sunday. And again, I'm thinking midnight. I mean, there's a great national security concern here, to be sure, but I also got to get to Palm Beach. But they bring us in. This is one of the interesting things that happens at the White House. I have a very small little booth that I work out of. And it's great real estate, let me tell you. I mean, it's not much bigger than a good-sized broom closet, but we fit three of us in there, sometimes four if we really have a lot going on. And on the far side of the wall is the colonnade. On the other side of the wall is the colonnade, where you've seen all those famous pictures of presidents walking back and forth from the residence of the White House to the Oval Office. And it's right there. There's a window looking out, but the window was covered up many years ago. They don't want us looking out there, but it's right there. I mean, if I walk out my office, the briefing room is 20 steps away, and if I go to the door by the briefing room that you see where the press secretary and the president comes out when they have press conferences, that is 20, 25 paces from the Oval Office. It's tremendous real estate. We don't necessarily get to see the president a lot when we're covering him or senior staff. They kind of keep us in our own place, but we are right there. And so I get this call, and it went out to about 15 reporters total, to come to the Roosevelt room, which is one of my favorite places in the White House. It's right across the hallway from the Oval, and it's named for both Roosevelts. So whenever I go in there for briefings, you get a little distracted by the history of the place, because it has Teddy Roosevelt's Medal of Honor on the wall. It's got great paintings of both Roosevelts. It's got you kind of feel both of them there, and you think both of them were here. So they bring me in, and this other group of reporters, and this happens on occasion. Every once in a while, it'll be a briefing with the president. More often, it's with various senior staff. This one was different because usually it's, it might be with the chief of staff, it might be with the national security advisor, it might be with his top political advisor. This was about the expiration of the Patriot Act. So they brought in some guy nobody had ever seen, but he's one of these NSA guys. The National Security Agency has been such a secretive agency over the years that for a while people said that NSA stood for no such agency. These guys don't get out in public. They've got their own little place out in Maryland where they do whatever they do. So the political guys are there as well, and they're saying, okay, we're going to turn over, and he's going to talk about what's going to happen if the Senate fails to pass an extension of these provisions of the Patriot Act. And I've never seen a briefing quite like this because he was so matter-of-fact and so completely apolitical, but just like, this is what's going on. And he describes the massive machines, computers, that keep all of that telephone data that this is all about, this surveillance program is all about. It keeps all this phone records. It's not just who you called and for how long, but it's called metadata. It's got your phones have so much information. I don't even understand all the stuff it has. But he starts describing what they have to do. He says, well, look, the authorization for this program ends at midnight on Sunday, but it takes us 8 hours to shut those machines down. So we're going to have to start shutting them down at 4 o'clock on Sunday, which, by the way, is when the Senate was coming in to debate this. It's like, now for the first 4 hours, if they get to me before 7:59, I can basically pull the plug on the shutdown and we can keep going. But if it's after 8, that thing's getting shut down. And then he says, it takes a full day to restart these computers. So if they get a deal, that whole thing that, again, the White House has absolutely critical to protecting national security, it's going to be dark, not just until they pass an extension, but for 24 hours while it takes them to restart the computers. And I'm thinking, I complain when my Mac has to restart, and I've got like 3 minutes. These guys, it's a full day to get this thing going. So, of course, the Senate met. They got a deal to extend this program, but Rand Paul was going to have none of it. The program has expired. It did expire at midnight. Those computer systems out at the NSA's headquarters have shut down. I assume, the way my read of the political environment, this program will get reauthorized sometime Wednesday or Thursday. It'll take another day, and eventually we'll be fine. Of course, you wonder. You hear all the kind of sky is falling analysis from the national security professionals. You just hope it's going to be kind of quiet. But anyway, it's a very, a different kind of a briefing with somebody I had never seen before and I may never see again from the NSA, Mr. NSA. I was not allowed to identify him by name. And then, so we got through that, and then news comes out of France that John Kerry, just fresh from his latest round of meetings with the Iranians about the nuclear talks, goes for a bicycle ride. The guy's got to keep in shape. He's been on the road so long. And he crashes his bicycle. And he gets hurt so bad that they airlift him out to a hospital in France. And today he's coming in a C-17 with in a military, military plane that's equipped with doctors and all kinds of equipment. So the official line is he only has a broken leg, but it's his femur. And I suspect this is a little more serious, even if it is just as they said it. This is a serious injury. Now, he was between meetings on Iran and the nuclear program, and meetings with other foreign ministers in Europe about ISIS. And now he's getting back to get emergency medical attention. And the deadline for those Iran talks are June 30th. So all this stuff kept on happening. But we made it here. Now, amidst all of that, I cover a lot of politics in addition to the White House, a lot of campaign politics. And I don't know if you've noticed, but it's basically every day we get a new presidential candidate. We got one today. Lindsey Graham announced he's running for president today. My friend Howard here said, are there going to be anybody left to vote? So, you know, it's certainly exciting time to be a White House correspondent, to be a political correspondent, and I kind of do both. But I've got to say, I am concerned about the state of our politics. And I'm not talking about the scandals. You know, I mean, look, we've had our share. I mean, the Hastert thing. Dennis Hastert is one of the most prominent political figures from the state of Illinois. And you got like Abraham Lincoln, right? You got Barack Obama. And you got the Speaker of the House, Dennis Hastert. I mean, he's, you know, that's pretty high. I mean, I'm not saying he's quite up to, but he's one of the most prominent, high-ranking officials that state's ever produced. And now, you know, he faces the possibility of up to 10 years in jail. And you realize this? 4 out of the last 7 governors of Illinois have gone to jail. I mean, like behind bars. The good thing is it's kind of bipartisan. I mean, you got some Democrats, you got some Republicans. Jesse Jackson Jr., congressman from Chicago, just got out of jail in March. He's now in a halfway house. Aaron Schock, well, he's now going to court, going, you know, on trial. The good thing, again, Jesse Jackson Jr. is a Democrat, Eric Schock's a Republican. It's a nice bipartisan tradition. But look, Illinois, it's got nothing on what we've seen. I mean, think about the glory days of Louisiana. Not even going back to Huey Long. I mean, think about, you get a major presidential candidate who got elected by and large because of that very memorable bumper sticker slogan, vote for the crook, it's important. This was Edwin Edwards, and it was important. He was a crook. He had been convicted, but it was important. He was running against a neo-Nazi. So given the choice between the neo-Nazi and the crook, the voters of Louisiana went with the crook. Edwin Edwards served out another term as governor, and then he went to jail for something else. Around the time that was going on, there was a member in the House, Congressman Foley, you may remember this, who gave a speech. He said, declared from the House, "My vote is not for sale." And he paused. He said, "For rent, maybe, but not for sale." Serious. Look at the congressional record. That's true. So it's not the corruption that I am worried about. I think, in fact, you can make an argument that this is that our political leaders in Washington are the least corrupt that we've ever had. I think you can make that argument. There's a lot of very, you know, good, well-meaning people who serve in Congress and the administration. The rules are so much tighter. The ethics regulations, you know, in terms of people out for themselves, profiting for themselves, I think we're probably at a low mark for that. So that's not what I'm more concerned about is today, whether it's in Congress or it's on college campuses or it's on the cable news shows, what I worry is that we are in danger of becoming a nation of people who only want to listen to people who agree with us. That we can go and we can get our own news sources that kind of reaffirm our views. We don't want to hear from those who would challenge us, who would disagree with us. You know, it used to be you could reliably say in debates in Washington, you could reliably say to somebody, you're entitled to your opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. And now it seems increasingly people come in with their own facts. I mean, 2 entirely diametrically opposed, you know, facts. So I have to say that's one reason, in addition for the opportunity to come here and spend some time with my family, which I also want to mention in a bit, that I felt very strongly about coming here to the Palm Beach Forum Club. Because to me, this organization represents something that is so incredibly important in our country. It's not just a bunch of you coming together and hearing some interesting speakers. This is more than that. Think, you know, look at who your recent lists are. I mean, you know who's been here. Sonia Sotomayor was here. And who not long before her? Justice Alito. You bring in speakers from the left, from the right, you've had, this just blows me away, 6 of the 9 people currently sitting on the Supreme Court have spoken to this group, from Clarence Thomas to Stephen Breyer. You've got the whole spectrum. The notorious RPG is next, right? That's Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Everybody loves her. She's and you know the Palm Beach Forum Club. Gail mentioned to me that next year's the 40th anniversary. So you guys all know this, right? Who the first speaker was 39 years ago? Jimmy Carter. Now that deserves a little bit of setup, because at the time, Jimmy Carter was this governor from Georgia, and former peanut farmer who thought he was going to run for president. I mean, it's kind of absurd. And he came here and he spoke to the very first meeting of the Palm Beach Forum Club. And then he went on and he won the Florida primary. And he became president. And in the general election, he was running against Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford, you know who his chief of staff was? Donald Rumsfeld, who also spoke here last year. I mean, this is just great. So it's a real honor to be here. And what I like is you bring people here, you listen to them, you ask them questions, you occasionally challenge them. I mean, this is the stuff I do every day. Well, I do it a little differently. So I wanted to bring, if we have, I think Wellington, my friend back here, I want to play a little clip of just kind of what happens to me day to day. Why did you not go along with State Department rules until nearly 2 years after you left office?
The laws and regulations in effect when I was Secretary of State allowed me to use my email for work.
The rules say you have to turn them over if you're going to use your private device. Why did you wait almost 2 years?
I'd be happy to have somebody talk to you about the rules.
John Karl, ABC News. We wanted to ask you about Harlan Watson's travels. We've noticed that he spent $76,000 on travel just in the last 9 months alone.
This was all approved by Chairman Markley. Ask him.
You've been known as the Prince of Pork. Have you changed your ways? You can't tell me definitively that is a photo of you or it is not a photo of you? Do you bear any responsibility for what has gone wrong in Iraq, or is it all General Casey's fault?
Oh, this is a question that gets asked every time there's a press conference. Of course I bear responsibility. My lord, I'm Secretary of Defense. Write it down. Quote it.
Jonathan Karl.
Mr. President, you are 100 days into your second term. Do you still have the juice to get the rest of your agenda through this Congress?
Well, if you put it that way, Jonathan, maybe I should just pack up and go home.
Going through this bill, there's earmark after earmark from the both of you. I mean, millions of dollars in earmarks from the two of you and from other senators. How do you have any credibility on this? Why do you have earmarks in here?
Because we're going to vote against the bill.
Senator, were you wrong when you put these earmarks in before?
Carl, this is not just about earmarks. Earmarks are a symptom of wasteful Washington spending that the American people have said they want reformed. We agree with them, and that's why we will vote against this bill.
Is that an acknowledgement that it was wrong to put the earmarks in the first place, I guess is my question. Was that, I mean, that's the old way of thinking, was that a mistake?
You've asked the question about 5 times.
I gotta say, it sounds strange. I mean, if somebody had a picture of me, my underwear, I think I would know. So we just wanted to ask you...
Excuse me, this is a senator-only elevator.
Can I come on the elevator?
No, you may not.
Is the president willing to engage in budget negotiations with the Republicans if the government is still shut down?
I think the president's been very clear on that. Tax breaks for millionaires, forcing shutdowns or default.
So there was a very long answer to a yes or no question.
Answer the questions, Ernest!
Can you tell me that the fact that she helped raise hundreds of thousands of dollars for the president's re-election campaign had nothing to do with her appointment? You can't say that, can you?
Well, I can tell you that that's not the reason that she was chosen. I can tell you that the reason that she was chosen, frankly, I was not part of this decision-making process.
What? You can't do that! That is the greatest thing I've ever seen the president's press secretary do. His entire job, his only job, is built around trying not to go, hey, look, I just work here.
As a practical matter, though, if you want to reach out and build bridges, don't you need to reach out to those who have been deeply offended?
Nobody has been more deeply offended than we who have suffered at the hands of your people. And you want us to apologize? You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Does Wiener Yes mean anything to you in the researching of the story?
Yes.
Does it?
Oh, yes, Wiener Yes does. In the light of recent developments, do you think Mitt Romney had a point when he said that Russia is America's biggest geopolitical foe. If not Russia, who?
Well, Jonathan.
Could we see you running for president in 2016?
So I have 5 words for that. No, 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 no.
Absolutely not. No. You're not really thinking about running for president, are you? Do you think you're ready to be president?
I do.
What do you think has been your biggest mistake? Do you want people in Washington to like you? Can you now acknowledge that you were just plain wrong about the president's birthplace?
No, not at all.
The president's position is you will not negotiate over the debt ceiling.
Correct.
You're saying you won't even negotiate with the Republicans on this issue. How is that tenable? Do you have any regrets?
Not really.
John. Yeah. I hadn't seen you in a while. Why are you covering Congress and not the White House?
Glad to be here, Mr. President.
Okay, good.
Returning to the question of torture.
Certainly there are questions, Jonathan.
But you don't still question that he was born in the United States, do you?
I have no idea. Maybe it wasn't.
You don't believe it was his birthright?
You know, hey, John, you're not a stupid person. You don't know either, Jonathan. You're a smart guy. You don't know either. I did all that
brilliant
stuff.
businessman, but
I made a lot of money.
But on this issue, people
well,
think
you just said you're pretty
smart.
sure, and if you're pretty sure, that's not acceptable because you can't be pretty sure. You have to be 100% sure.
I'm sure. I'm 100% sure.
I don't think you are, Jonathan. You're too smart to say you're 100% sure.
Excuse me.
Okay, are you concerned about those that are going to lose their benefits? Okay, so anyway, thank you for. So I've got to tell you, I do that a lot. I also had a tremendous opportunity recently that I had asked the White House for permission to do like a year ago, and they finally gave me access. I fly on Air Force One whenever I'm part of what they call the press pool, usually on international trips. And they always, the press, there's a group of 13 reporters, camera people and all, total 13. They sit, I don't know why it's the unlucky number, by the way, but they have us sit way in the back of Air Force One. It's still amazing. You're in that plane. But it's right back by the last galley. You know, and I wanted to get a chance to highlight that plane and all that it means. I mean, you fly in that plane, and you land in a foreign country on an international trip with the president, and that plane kind of symbolizes America. Something about it. So I got the chance to go and see the interview the pilots and see the entire cabin and the flying Oval Office. There's the Situation Room in the air, and there are these professionals with the Air Force. It's like the elite of the elite, and these guys and women have served president after president without any regard for party or for what they stand for on any political issues. These people represent the office of the presidency and do it with, incredible pride and incredible skill. Air Force One, I learned, has never had a single mechanical delay. It's never been delayed, as long as it's been on. And that plane that I was on is. It went into operation in 1990, and the one before it, these planes have not had any mechanical delays because of these, people who put so much effort and pride into that. I asked the pilot about it. You seen the movie Air Force One with Harrison Ford? Yeah. I asked him if that was realistic at all, and believe it or not, he said no. I don't know why, but I was very hurt to find out there is no escape pod in Air Force One. You know, the escape pod, you stick the president in, you can get out. I was thinking the reporters wouldn't go on that pod, but, I was like, it's just a reminder to me that, what makes our country so great, I think, is that, one way to look at the negative side of it is no party can do enough damage to really do lasting damage to what this country is all about. That's the way the founders designed it. Now, there's a positive view of that. You've got an ability to do great things and accomplish great things. But we are, from political party to political party, able to still remain, the greatest country in the world. And I think that's, in a way that these folks on Air Force One really symbolized it. Now I'm out spending most of my time, and will be for the next 18 months, with the people who want to be the next person to ride on that plane. 18 months of campaign, and we already have 9 Republican candidates who have declared. 9 who have declared. By the way, that does not include Jeb Bush. It does not include Scott Walker. It doesn't include John Kasich of Ohio. There's already 9, and there's a lot more to come. Donald Trump, who you saw me, that was before the last one. He says he's going to run this time. Now, I know he's said this many times before, but June 16th, which is I think when my daughter Emily here graduates, is what they're telling us is the date that he's actually going to announce he's running for president. Now, some of you may love Donald Trump, some of you may not, I have no idea, but you may scoff and say this is a big joke. His poll numbers, he'll be in the debates. And like the first debate, they're limiting it to 10 people with the 10 highest poll numbers. Donald Trump will be in that debate. And there's going to be a couple of governors, former governors, who aren't going to be. It's going to be a raucous, this is the first time where I can say we have absolutely no idea who is going to win this election on the Republican side. And how are we doing on time? Are you giving me a... It was very subtle though, wasn't it? Yes, it was very subtle, but I was so subtle I didn't... Okay, excellent. So that, for a political reporter, again, makes this extremely exciting. I mean, last time we thought we had no idea who was going to win. You remember when Herman Cain, Mr. 999, I looked back on this before I came down here. He actually led in the polls for 3.5 weeks in the Gallup poll nationally. Herman Cain was the leading candidate for the Republican nomination in 2012. Heaven knows what's going to happen this time, because there is nobody, at least at the beginning of last time, you got a sense of Mitt Romney, maybe Rick Perry before his, you had a sense that there were a couple of, that there was a front runner. This time, I mean, you might have said Jeb Bush, but find me a single poll where Jeb Bush is winning, either in a single state or nationally. And then on the Democratic side, you've heard of Hillary Clinton, right? You saw me at the UN questioning her at, that was her first press conference in like 2 years, by the way, that one she held. And she hasn't had very many since. Actually, I don't think she's had any true press conferences since that one. But, she's basically, they're doing a coronation on the Democratic side, and there's like, nobody thinks there's any chance that anybody can beat her. But, her strongest opposition right now is a 73-year-old self-described socialist with a Brooklyn accent from Vermont. I mean, you can't make this stuff up. I dug up a tape of him. It turns out that back before he became mayor of Burlington and broke onto the scene in Vermont, he did some folk singing. You gotta Google this, because I went and I played some of his old songs for him, and he starts dancing and singing. He got the white hair, and he's just kind of just absolutely incredible. But I think Hillary's going to have look, there's nobody thinks that Bernie Sanders is going to beat Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination. And Martin O'Malley announced over the weekend, it's hard for me to find a poll where he actually reaches 1% against Hillary Clinton among Democrats. Seriously. I mean, we were at 0.5 in the ABC poll. I didn't even know they did points in these polls. But, I think I think there are serious issues, and, that there are issues about the Clinton Foundation. You saw me questioning her about the emails. There are serious issues that I think also trouble Democrats. I was talking to Jerry Brown, the governor of California. Of course, in his second round as governor, he went so long between terms as governor. There were a 40-year period, which was the same, he pointed out to me, the period between Woodrow Wilson's, the end of Woodrow Wilson's term and the beginning of John Kennedy's. That's the span of Jerry Brown's career as governor. And he told me, I asked him about the Clintons. I don't know if this was a direct, he didn't want to engage too directly on this, about all the, the speaking fees and the foundation money. And he said that his father, Governor Edmund Brown, told him when he was young, he said, look, Jerry, you can be either rich or you can be famous, but don't be both. Don't try to be both. And he said, without mentioning the Clintons, he said, some people try to be both and they get in trouble. So I think it's going to be interesting. The Democratic Party has announced they're going to have 6 debates. So Hillary Clinton's going to be theoretically on stage. She has said that she'll participate in them. And it's, again, who knows what happens. I will say here, and I will close on this. I will say that the big predictions going into this race have been that it would be another Bush v. Clinton. I do not think it is going to be a Bush v. Clinton. I can't tell you what it's going to be. Wouldn't be surprised if one of those was in there, but I'd have a very hard time figuring out, thinking that there would be a repeat, a Bush v. Clinton. Before I take questions, I want to shout out some very special people here. You heard my family is here. Really honored to have them here. My mom wouldn't have did anything I've been able to do without you. My dad, to me represents everything that is great about our country. He is a lifelong fireman, active in his community, never misses a Memorial Day parade, active in public service through the Kiwanis Club his entire life. And it's just very inspiring to have all of you here, and Wendy and Howard and Emily as well. Thank you. Thank you very much. And now questions, but I got to ask, don't make them hard. I mean, I ask the questions. I'm not very good at answering them.
You better get good.
Okay, all right. That's not what I do.
Before we get to the questions,
yes.
I do want to say during the slide presentation, the look of shameless pride on your mother's face was glorious. All right, we have 3 questions from our students. We're going to start off with, first of all, from Nova Southeastern University. They'll have the first crack at John.
Hello, hi, good afternoon. My name is Alina Palmer. I'm here from Nova Southeastern University. I'm representing our School of Business and our Department of Political Science. My question for you this afternoon is, what stands out to you as the defining features of the White House under President Obama? In terms of your work, given your experience, is the current administration more or less open in terms of dealing with the media?
The question of media access is one that, first of all, it's kind of our job as reporters to complain about media access because we always want more, and I think we want it not because we're like reporters and we want to do better at our jobs. It's because it's actually the public service. I mean, this is, when they give us access, we are reporting for all of you to know what's going on behind closed doors at the White House or Capitol Hill. So I think it's an essential public service. President Obama, well, then Senator Obama, ran for president promising to have the most transparent administration in American history. He did not succeed at all. There have been a number of ways in which the Obama administration has limited access instead of expanded access to reporters. By the way, this is a trend that's been going on for a while, and I would have said the same thing about George W. Bush, but it's actually gotten worse under President Obama. And I think that Press Secretary Josh Earnest has tried to address some of these concerns because they've been relayed officially through the White House Correspondents Association. So this is not just me saying this. This is something you will hear. I mean, Ann Compton, who is former ABC White House correspondent and one of the real legends, the first woman to be a network correspondent at the White House, she said that this administration is the worst in terms of media access, and she's got a perspective to talk about that. So I just don't think it's a big priority for them. They've and President Obama has done so much to try to get around the regular press corps. You see the interviews he's done on, with the YouTube stars or Between Two Ferns with Zach Galifianakis, and he did an interview with a guy named the Pimp with a Limp, a radio guy in Philadelphia. I still don't have an interview with him, but the Pimp with a Limp has. So, there are fewer press conferences, and this was a big complaint we had of President Bush too. So it is a and the funny thing is when they're running for office, they will promise all kinds of access, and they get to office, they realize it's a lot easier if you don't have to deal with the press. So they can't not deal with us entirely, but they can limit us, and I think that's what we've seen happen.
The next question is from Jupiter High School.
Good afternoon, Mr. Karl. My name is Kelsey Lunsford, co-president of the Jupiter High School Speech and Debate Team. For 15 years, you worked diligently to reduce government spending. As a result, you successfully helped to reduce unnecessary government spending in the area of congressional travel expenses. As a journalist, this is an amazing accomplishment. Jumping off from the success, in what other areas do you believe that government spending can be reduced?
Well, you know, it's one thing to reduce spending on something like congressional travel. The actual dollar amounts end up being rather modest. Although, as Everett Dirksen once said, you know, $1 million here, $1 million there, and pretty soon you're talking real money. I mean, now it's like 10 billion here and 10 billion there, and pretty soon you're talking real money. But the only way you really get a hold of the deficit situation is if you deal with the explosive growth in entitlement spending. And you know, the biggest drivers of that, of course, are Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security. These are some of the most popular programs we've had. In some ways, some of the most effective programs we've had. But there's going to need to be some reform and some ability to restrain the costs of those programs if the deficit's going to be brought under control. Thanks.
And our final student question is from Seminole Ridge High School.
Good afternoon, Mr. Karl. My name is Jessica Turkovich, and I am the president of the debate team at Seminole Ridge, and I'm also representing the ACE Global Perspectives class. And my question is, in your 16 years in Washington, how have you seen the relationship between journalists and politicians change?
Well, I think that one thing that's changed is just the whole media landscape. So when I first started doing this, we didn't have you know, Facebook and Twitter, and you know, YouTube was not a factor. We had you know, it was still much more the traditional news outlets, the major newspapers, the wire services, the networks. When I first started at CNN, Fox and MSNBC actually weren't on the air yet. 1996 was when I started, and they both came on the air later that year, and were very small and relatively inconsequential because people hadn't caught on to them yet. And there was a big doubt whether or not either one of them would really make it. So that's changed a lot, and that ends up changing the relationship between us and the newsmakers, particularly at the White House, where the White House can find more ways to kind of, again, try to get around the White House press corps, because we're going to ask the toughest questions. We're the ones that are going to know the issues the best because we're covering it day in and day out, and you know, they can find a way, again, to kind of go around us. You know, there was a big controversy at the White House with the fact that the president had a Flickr feed. Now, a Flickr feed was not something you had to worry about in, you know, Abraham Lincoln's day, you know, but the White House has an official Flickr feed. It's actually very good, and they've got a official White House photographer named Pete Souza, who is outstanding, former Newsweek guy, really good guy. And he's got a team of assistant photographers, and they started just putting out, you know, the official photograph of whatever the president was doing that day, and they're really good photos. But like the paid, the White House photographers, like the journalists, the photojournalists, like what? These were events that we weren't even allowed in to see or to take pictures, and now we have the official, you know, photo coming out from the White House. This is what happened. Well, you know, North Korea's got an official, you know, news agency as well. I mean, it's like it's okay to have the White House Flickr feed, but you got to let the journalists in as well. And that has loosened up a little bit. Again, I think Josh Earnest has taken a lot of these concerns really to heart, and you know, and has tried to open up a bit at the White House. And it's our job to push him to do more. But that's one way, I think, the biggest way it's changed is that they have many more ways to try to decide we're going to go around the reporters and try just to go out. And I think I think it's okay to go out and do the alternative media, and that's fantastic, and they should be doing that, but they should also be engaging the people whose job it is to cover them. Thank you.
Very well done, students. Thank you. We have a couple of questions that are going to focus on the next 18 months of your life. First is, with an open presidential seat, why are there so many Republicans and why so few Democrats? And is part of that problem the fact that we have a sitting vice president who we just imagine is not running?
Yeah, that's a huge part about it. You know, of course, Alvin Barkley, right? Alvin Barkley was the vice president, and for Truman. Do I have that right, Howard? So we've had a couple of situations like this where, where in history where you've had a sitting vice president who you just know is not going to be, the candidate. But it's been a while. I mean, you've had, Dick Cheney wasn't going to run, but you had John McCain who was kind of, there, kind of ready to take his turn. And you had a whole bunch of others who thought that McCain was beatable. So you had a significant field in 2008. This is a unique situation where you have somebody who is so immensely well qualified, Hillary Clinton. I mean, you look at that resume. I don't know if you could have a more well qualified person. Secretary of State, United States Senator. 8 years as a very activist, policy-driven First Lady. She is an unbelievably formidable candidate who almost won the primary 8 years ago. I mean, as she says, 18 million votes. And if they had kind of gotten off to a better start, she would have won that race. Obama kind of, surprised everybody. So here you have this candidate who is immensely qualified, is extremely popular among Democrats, and who was basically almost like not just the runner-up, but almost tied last time. And in the interim, served as Secretary of State. And again, garnered all that whole other aspect of her resume. So unfortunately for Democrats, and the Democrats I talk to in Washington are very uneasy about this. I mean, having such a huge star there ready to jump in has meant that there's very little room for anybody else to emerge, and it means there is no bench. I mean, you have nobody to step in, It's kind of like, I don't know what the Patriots are going to be like with Brady out 4 games. I mean, I don't know what it's like to be the backup quarterback for the New England Patriots. But that's with Hillary Clinton, there is no backup. Democrats just don't have that bench, whereas Republicans have been not only out of power for 8 years, but there's been a lot of pent up desire to get out there, and you've got a lot of they've been winning a lot of the other big problem for Democrats is they haven't won many statewide races. I mean, you look at the major governors races in the key states. The last several cycles have been won far more by Republicans. So you have, people like Scott Walker and, John Kasich of Ohio, I think is somebody to watch. He comes in at about 2% of the poll, so he won't be in that first debate unless something changes. But, here's a guy who won twice in Ohio, won the last time by about 30 points. And, Ohio is that, Ohio and Florida, you win those 2 states, you win the presidency. So there's a Republican bench, and there just isn't on the Democratic side, and it's something they are worried about.
You should know in South Florida, no one cares if there's not a bench behind Tom Brady and the Patriots. In talking about Hillary Clinton, what are your thoughts on her limiting or shutting out direct access from the press?
It was a little troubling. I mean, she went something like 22 days or something without taking a question from reporters. Can you imagine you're in a presidential campaign? And it's the early stages. The early stages of a presidential campaign, I've covered a bunch of these. This is why you like covering the primaries, because you're with these guys in New Hampshire or Iowa or South Carolina or maybe down in Florida. And, they're just trying to get some traction, so they'll talk to anybody. Somebody running for president right now. And to see her go like 3 weeks without taking a single question was strange. Really, really kind of odd. Now, what I am told by senior advisors to Hillary on her campaign is that this is about to change. She's going to have a big rally in early June. Bill will be there. Chelsea will be there. It's going to be not like these small events that she's been going and doing at the early states, but a big traditional political rally. And with that, she will start taking more questions, doing more interviews, and doing all that. I would think that she kind of has to, and she can be very good at this stuff. So I don't know why she would want to completely have this kind of, because it becomes an issue and it becomes a distraction. She is very smart person, as you know. She can handle questions from somebody like me quite easily. So I think that's going to change a little bit.
Most people run to their base during the primaries. This writer seems to think Jeb Bush seems to be running away from his base. Are there presidential candidates in the past who have been successful with this strategy?
Running away from their base, it's hard to find an example. You know, and it's interesting. So I think that one calculation you've seen Jeb Bush make is, first of all, he wants to be true to who he is. And it's hard to fault somebody who wants to, you know, Romney had a different approach. Romney had been a very moderate governor in Massachusetts. He had to get elected in Massachusetts. And, you know, suddenly, and he had lost the primary in 08, so he comes back in 12, and suddenly he's got every conservative position down the line, and he's not going to waver from that at all. He wants to get the base. You know, ultimately it worked. He got the nomination. He didn't obviously win the general election. And I think part of Romney's problem was a little bit of who are you, you know? There was that whole kind of flip-flop argument and, you know, what do you really believe in? So, you know, I think it might be refreshing for somebody to actually run for president and say, this is what I actually believe in, and I'm going to tell you the same thing during the primary that I'm going to tell you in the general election. Wouldn't that be shocking? By the way, Hillary Clinton's people firmly believe that her strategy and message in this primary phase, which she doesn't have much competition right now, and the general election phase, where she will have a lot of competition, is exactly the same. And they believe that what Hillary needs to do is to energize the coalition of people that voted for Barack Obama. That she needs to, in other words, run for her base in the primary and run for her base in the general election. That the idea of picking off moderates and independents and all that is not how she's going to win. She's going to win by driving up the turnout of the Democratic base, just like Obama did, very effectively. Although, you know, Obama in 2008 also got a significant slice of the independents and moderates.
With foreign policy concerns taking priority in the 2016 elections, what major domestic issues do you see the candidates focusing on?
Well, this is going to be a really interesting debate domestically. You know, the issue we've heard so much about is the increasing gap between rich and poor. And I moderated a debate between Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, and Rand Paul earlier this year, and asked them all about this. And what is interesting is you hear Republicans talking about this. Not so much, you know, unfettered, free market, laissez-faire capitalism, which of course they all do believe in, but you do hear them talking about how that we have wage stagnation for those in the middle class and at the lower end of the economic spectrum. And the reason why it's a little easier for them to talk about it is because the Democrats have been in power for 8 years. So they want to say, you know, it hasn't worked. But it forces them to come up with an idea of, well, what are you going to do about it? And I think there's going to be a debate on the Republican side over what to do about poverty and income inequality. And that's going to be a very interesting debate. And certainly that is going to be a major issue in the general election.
Who were your mentors growing up in the business?
You know, I had a college professor who I loved, Walter Fairservice, who was an anthropology professor. I never even took any anthropology, but he taught a course called Comparative Worldviews. And I just took it because of the reading list. It had everything from the Iliad to the autobiography of Malcolm X. And everything, I mean, it was like the most ridiculously comprehensive reading list you could ever imagine, just to expose you to basically the history of ideas. And I've always thought about Fairservice. He was rumored to be the guy they modeled Indiana Jones after. He was a big archaeologist. And the team at whatever studio it was that was working on the film, the first one, came and interviewed him about how archaeology, the digs worked. They wanted to be accurate and all that. And suddenly Indiana Jones has the same hat and all this. You know, he wasn't quite Indiana Jones, but he was a legend. And I miss him. He died many years ago, but a great guy.
We have two more. Do you think the elimination of earmarks has been an effective manner in